Simply put, this offensive line is boom or bust. Here's why.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day, and we are always free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, it's the offensive line position preview for Syracuse football. Later on, we'll try to predict who's going to start along the offensive line in 2025. Some questions for the unit this upcoming season. But first, the strengths of the offensive line for Syracuse football in 2025. All that and more here on today's edition of Locked On Syracuse. We have just two position preview podcasts left. One of course, being the offensive line, which we're discussing today. And later on, we're going to talk about the entirety of the special teams. So first and foremost, before we get to the strengths of this offensive line, why it could be really good this season, let's get to the main players briefly who could make up the offensive line, right? There's 9 players we're going to go over here just very quickly. In no particular order: Austin Collins, a center or a guard from Louisville; Demetrius Weatherspoon, a tackle, a returning player; TJ Ferguson, a guard from Florida State. You have Cam Pringle, a guard or tackle from South Carolina; Travion Mack, a tackle returning player; Joe Cruz, a guard or tackle returning player; Zach Rice, a guard or tackle, a North Carolina transfer. We'll get to him a lot here on the show. Niquil Beatrand, a tackle from Alabama; and Josh Miller, a guard returning player for Syracuse football. Let's get to the strengths now, okay? Why this unit could be really good. Number one, they're big. As Fran Brown, the head coach of Syracuse, likes to say, big people eat little people. And those 9 players, according to the Syracuse football website, are all listed above 300 pounds. So they certainly got size. In fact, the quote-unquote smallest of the 9 players that I mentioned in terms of weight is Austin Collins at 305 pounds. Most of the players I talked about range anywhere between 320 and 330 pounds. Obviously, you can't teach size. You can't really teach strength. So Syracuse's offensive line potential, right off the bat, you can kind of see it because, hey, they should not be pushed around from size alone from some of these other teams because they themselves have size. And as Fran Brown says, once again, big people eat little people. So that's strength number one. This is a big offensive line making up Syracuse football. Number two is they do have some talent. It's not just the fact that they're big, but they also have some ability. A lot of them have prior pedigree or they have a lot of starting experience as well. Austin Collins last season at Louisville graded as one of the better pass blocking guards in the nation, according to Pro Football Focus. Cam Pringle, a 4-star recruit in the 2024 recruiting class. So that's not long ago. And that was at South Carolina too. So clearly they thought he was pretty good. He did redshirt that first season at South Carolina, but still most offensive linemen end up redshirting as true freshmen. 4-star recruit in 2024 and one of the better offensive linemen in this year's transfer portal class. You got Zach Rice, a 5-star recruit in 2022. He was actually, I believe, the number 1 tackle in the country when he committed to North Carolina. Him and Jonte Cook, I believe, are the only 5-star recruits on Syracuse's roster right now. Now, obviously, hopefully next year, assuming Calvin Russell stays with his commitment, and all indications seem to be that he will, Syracuse will have another 5-star recruit on the roster, and actually a homegrown 5-star recruit. But for now, those are the only two guys, Zach Rice and Jonte Cook. Jonte Cook, though, being a 2023 5-star player. TJ Ferguson, we're going to talk a lot about him as well because he was at Florida State last year and Alabama before that. He started 7 games at Florida State last season. He did not play very well, according to Pro Football Focus. But hey, he was a 4-star transfer who's played at some big-time programs. Even if Florida State having a terrible year, they're still historically one of the elite programs in the nation. They just did not have a good year last season. And of the players that I did not single out just now, all of them either come from a big-time program or have prior starting experience. So they got talent. They got potential. And we'll talk more about that actually later on in the show when we discuss the questions for the unit in 2025. The number 3 strength for Syracuse offensive line, versatility. And you're already seeing and hearing the reports from camp how a lot of these offensive linemen are just rotating around the line, playing different positions. Position versatility is incredibly important. Guys get hurt. Guys underperform. Different matchups that you want. You want to be able to move your offensive linemen to any particular position you want. You want that versatility. A guy like Austin Collins was a guard at Louisville, but also has experience playing center, is probably going to be the starting center for Syracuse football. Another example, Zach Rice. We understand he's a 5-star tackle from North Carolina in 2022, but he can also play guard. In fact, that's probably where he's going to play for Syracuse this upcoming season. So once again, the 3 big strengths for Syracuse on their offensive line and why this unit could be really good, could be one of the better units in the ACC. Number 1, they're big. Number 2, there's potential and there's some talent. Number 3, there's some versatility. And comment your thoughts in the comments section below right now on the offensive line. Do you think it's going to be one of the better units in the ACC? And why do you believe that? Comment in the comment section below. Now, coming up, I said at the top of the show, this is boom or bust potential. So we're going to get into some of the questions for the offensive line. That's coming up next on Locked On Syracuse. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following along the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. Or maybe you're with your friends at a baseball game, and baseball games, particularly in the start, are very exciting, but then you get to the middle innings and it can kind of get boring. Well, in FanDuel, you can place live same-game parlays, and you can do it while you're actually at the game. And guess what? If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. New customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Here's the big question for Syracuse's offensive line in 2025. You ready? It's quite simple. Will it all come together? We discussed in the first segment. They're big. Everyone above 300 pounds. Most of which being between 320 and 330 pounds. They should not be pushed around by anyone. They got the size. There's some prior starting experience along the offensive line. There's some good high school pedigree, good transfer portal ratings from some of these players. Is it all going to come together to form one of the better offensive lines in the ACC, or is it going to fall flat? Comment your thoughts right now in the comments section below. But that's the big question. But there's more questions on top of it. Number one, can they build chemistry? This is a brand new offensive line. And for any offensive line to be successful, they need to understand how to work together as a unit. You can have 5 All-Americans along the offensive line. 5, all of them, All-Americans, great talents, gonna be NFL players one day. But if they don't understand how to work together, the unit will not succeed. You have to be able to communicate and understand what each other is doing. You also have to understand what the quarterback is thinking. The point is that everyone has to be on the same page. And Syracuse's offensive line is not really going to have a grace period to build that chemistry. They kind of have to do it right now in fall camp because week 1 is against Tennessee. Tennessee, you're not playing Colgate week 1. That's week 3. You're playing Tennessee in week 1. That's a real team. That's a team right now on FanDuel that's favored by 14.5 points. Can the offensive line come together in time and build that chemistry you need as a unit to succeed? Once again, brand new offensive line, whether it's guys who graduated, guys who left in the transfer portal, or in the unfortunate case of a guy like Mark Petrie, got hurt and is going to miss the entirety of the season. So they got to build chemistry with this new offensive line, or else it's not going to work. Period. End of story. Number 2, and this is not meant to be disrespectful to any of the newcomers along Syracuse's offensive line, but we have to ask the question in order to understand why it can work at Syracuse. Why did it not work at the other school? Let's go down the line here. TJ Ferguson. He did not have a good year at Florida State, according to Pro Football Focus. And we documented that when Syracuse got him in the spring transfer portal. Hey, yes, he's got 7 starts along Florida State's offensive line, but he did not grade well at all. He was not very good for Florida State last season. But here's the thing. Was it more a byproduct of Florida State simply just being a bad team and everyone had a bad year, no one was able to step up? Or was it mainly because TJ Ferguson also just wasn't very good? Is Syracuse the school for a guy like TJ Ferguson to succeed? That's a legitimate question I have. Zach Rice. We know he's a former 5-star tackle. We know he was once the number 1 tackle in the nation in high school. How come he's only been able to play 44 offensive snaps, all of which came at right guard at North Carolina over the past 3 seasons? And for more context, he's played in 27 career college games. How come? Why did it not work at North Carolina? Well, Zach Rice actually made some comments about North Carolina, but more specifically about new head coach Bill Belichick. And he essentially said that he and him did not see eye to eye. But Bill Belichick just got to North Carolina. What happened with the prior coaching staff? Why did it not work for Zach Rice? He also mentioned that he likes the scheme that Jeff Nixon runs. He also likes playing guard. Maybe that's it right there. Maybe it's the scheme. Maybe it's the fact that he can play guard at Syracuse. Maybe there's less pressure on him now. But we'll find out. It's all got to come together. There's potential, but will it come together? This is why it's a boomer bust offensive line in 2025. Nikhil Betran and Cam Pringle. Those guys are coming from Alabama, South Carolina. I believe N'Keal Beatrain, actually before Alabama, he was at Texas A&M, and Syracuse tried to get him last offseason, heading into 2024. Clearly, he's got talent. Same with Cam Pringle. Are those two guys good enough to play anywhere? Are those two guys good enough to play at only some schools? Or are those guys not good enough to be starters in a power conference? All things that we can find out this season for Syracuse football along the offensive line. Again, I'm not saying any of this to be negative. These are legitimate questions that I have for the offensive line this upcoming season because I do see the potential. They're big. They got some talent. They got some prior starting experience. They got position versatility. But can it all come together starting in week 1 against Tennessee? Comment your thoughts in the comments section below. What questions do you have for Syracuse's offensive line in 2025? And do you think the unit can be better than what it was last season? In fact, that's what we're going to talk about in the next segment of this show. So stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. This is Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. We still got plenty more to discuss about Syracuse's offensive line for 2025. But before we do so, shout out to all those who have made it this far in the podcast. I hope that means that you enjoy the Locked On Syracuse podcast. And if so, if you can just do me a quick favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel grow to reach all Syracuse Orange fans. And of course, thank you to all those who continue to like and subscribe to Locked On Syracuse each and every day. You all are truly the best. Now, back to the offensive line and kind of comparing it to last year. And then at the very end, we'll try to predict who the 5 starters will be for this unit, at least at the start of the 2025 season. This goes without saying. The offensive line in football is incredibly important no matter what level of football. It is very, very difficult to win without a strong offensive line. Now, what should give you hope about Syracuse's offensive line coming together and being one of the better units in the ACC is not just the fact that they got talent or the versatility or the fact that they're big. We haven't discussed enough the system. And Zach Rice, I mentioned it earlier, but he said it. The system is really good for him. And maybe that is the key right there for this unit in general. Now, we know, based on what the coaches have said, Syracuse is not changing their offensive scheme from a year ago. So, what about Syracuse's scheme makes it easier for offensive linemen? Not easy, easier. It's the fact, given last year, Syracuse ran a lot of short passing plays, quick developing passing plays. You saw a lot of bubble screens. You saw a lot of quick ins, a lot of quick outs, quick slants, a lot of RPO action. Kyle McCord's job last year, for the most part, decipher the defense pre-snap, figure out what he's going to do with the ball before he gets the ball, and when he gets the ball, deliver an on-time, accurate throw. And he did that better than almost any quarterback in the country, if not actually better than any other quarterback in the country. When a quarterback is getting rid of the ball so quickly, that obviously helps the offensive line, particularly in pass protection, because they don't have to pass block for that long. If it's set hike, 1-2 throw, your offensive line doesn't have to do all that much. Withstand that initial pressure from the defensive line, and you're golden. And that's what Kyle McCord did last year. And the stats actually back it up. Syracuse football last year in pass protection, they were 34th best in the country in sack rate allowed. They only got sacked on 4.5% of their pass attempts last year. Again, that was 34th in the nation. Pretty good. So the offensive scheme makes it kind of friendly for offensive linemen in general, particularly in pass protection. And as a result, I have faith that the offensive line will be pretty good. And you should probably have faith that the offensive line will be pretty good, so long as the quarterback does his job of getting rid of the football on time. As far as the run blocking is concerned, that's, I guess, the concern. Because Syracuse last year, quite frankly, was not a good run blocking team. They were second worst in the ACC with only 3.2 yards per carry. Yes, I understand that that's in part because Kyle McCord, not a super mobile quarterback, and quarterbacks lose rushing yards on sacks for whatever reason in college football. I understand that, but still, it's not like Syracuse's running backs had the highest yards per carry either. This was not a very efficient running team, despite having LaQuinn Allen last season in the backfield. The good news is that the offensive line should be better in run blocking than it was last season because they were second worst in the ACC last year, 3.2 yards per carry. You have to figure they can be a little bit better in run blocking this upcoming season. So I do think the offensive line in general, I call it boom or bust. I'm leaning more towards boom. I do think it'll be one of the better offensive units or offensive line units in the ACC. But hey, agree with me, disagree with me, comment in the comments section below. As far as who I think is going to start, this is tricky because I don't think really anyone knows what the starting five will be for the offensive line. Again, there's 5 offensive linemen. That's why I say starting 5. This is not basketball. They're all rotating. It's not easy. I'm going to do my best to go 5 for 5. So let's try. Left tackle, Demetrius Weatherspoon. Why Demetrius Weatherspoon at left tackle? That's where he made 10 starts for Syracuse last season. Okay. Left guard, TJ Ferguson. He made 7 starts for Florida State there last season. Center. This is probably the one I'm most confident in, Austin Collins, because it's been the expectation for a while, particularly after Mark Petrie went down. And the reason is because Austin Collins, not only the fact that Mark Petrie went down, it's also because he does have some experience playing center at Louisville. At right guard, Zach Rice, the former 5-star tackle. Why at right guard? That's where he played at North Carolina the prior seasons when he did get on the field. Right tackle, this one obviously very tricky too. I'm going to go with Cam Pringle. He's only played 6 snaps in college football. That is the number 6 only. All at right guard. And they were all run plays, I believe against Akron, for South Carolina. But he was listed as a tackle in the transfer portal, and some major recruiting websites also list him as a tackle. So I'll pencil him in as the right tackle. So overall, my prediction, I guess, is Demetrius Weatherspoon at left tackle, TJ Ferguson left guard, center Austin Collins, right guard Zach Rice, right tackle Cam Pringle. Agree with me? Disagree with me? Comment your thoughts in the comment section below. Your starting offensive line for Syracuse in 2025. Now, as far as what is coming up on Locked On Syracuse here in the near future, tomorrow, we got Poll Friday, and it is the opposite of last week's Poll Friday, where we did a Syracuse football veteran offensive player to have a big year. Tomorrow, we're talking about a veteran defender to have a big year. And the candidates, Derek McDonald, Barry Buxton, Kevin Jobity, and Dennis Jaquez. I don't think I'll be able to make that a full podcast. So tomorrow, probably back to the usual 10 to 15 minute Poll Friday episode. The next podcast, most likely, barring some big breaking news, we're going to do the special teams preview podcast. And I may release it over the weekend. It just depends on timing. If it doesn't come out over the weekend, don't worry. Then it'll be Monday's podcast. So that's what's coming up on Locked On Syracuse here in the near future. Thank you for making us your first listen today. For your second listen, you can check out the Locked On Portal Show with football recruiting expert Brian Smith, who's got the latest rumors and signings each and every day. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape and find the Portal Podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. And hey, if you really enjoy the podcast, be sure to hit subscribe. Tell all your friends about Locked On Syracuse because we're just 23 days away from the start of Syracuse football season down in Atlanta, Georgia, to take on the Tennessee Volunteers. Obviously, a neutral site game, and this is the place you're going to want to be for all football coverage. Again, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. Everyone, take care.